These are some of the parts that I need to sandblast and paint to put the engine back in. All right, so the goal right now is to put that engine back on the frame as soon as possible, which means right now. So I got the parts for the engine mounts sandblasted and painted. They've been drying for a whole day, so they're ready to get installed. And then we can install the engine. Now, I didn't put back any of the EGR parts or anything else that I took off. I didn't even put back the clutch or anything else, but you know what? That's okay. We're gonna install this anyways. I still gotta clean the adapter housing there. Still got a little work to do, but it's fully accessible once it's in the frame. The thing is, if I put this on the frame right now, then we have a lot of work that we can do. We can have 3 guys assembling parts all around. But with that out right now, there's not a lot of work to do. There's just a little bit of work on here to do. Once it's installed, I can work on hooking back up the wiring and the hoses, and we can work on getting the transmission back in, the clutch, the radiator, blah, blah, blah. There's a million things we can do once that engine is back in this frame. So that's the goal right now. We're gonna roll this back. We're gonna install that engine.
Yep. That's better. And that's good. Straighten it out. I guess this is it.
This frame is really dusty already. Makes it look like it's not painted.
Okay.
Look at that. Look at that dust.
You want
It's
the
just
nuts
dust.
on the inside or the nuts on the outside?
I don't.
Okay, so
This one?
there's a nut. All right, you're left, top. Perfect.
Hello?
Goodbye. That's pull it out a little bit so I can see the hole. So kind of hold it in. I'm not gonna stay there. Oh, I would love to take a piece of rubber and put in here. That's all just metal to metal.
Well, you get the.
I mean, this is rubber too. I mean, it's like that from the factory, so I guess it's what I find. You gotta twist so that you're towards the back a little bit more with this front. So you gotta twist this way. Just a little bit. Perfect. Go. Calm down. Up. Go down a little bit. Okay. Right over the hole over here. I think that's things. It kind of has to be shifted this way a little bit, but
Yeah,
I think we can do that on the bar
Yeah.
once we find it.
This one just needs to be lifted up from the frame and then it just readjusted a little bit here and there, but.
Good. Stay. Oh. It's like a, hey guy, do something for me.
Tentatively set it there. You can just let go of that. I'm just gonna There we go.
Better?
Yep.
Nice.
So when we were removing this transmission, there's this grease line that runs from here to the bottom of the bell housing, which this would be like this. That way you can grease this throwout bearing. And when we were taking it out, I could not get this off, so I cut it. So I got to replace this. And then there's a washer that goes on here and it goes through the bell housing. So I got to reconfigure that whole thing. So we got our transmission all painted up. I will be replacing this down the road with, I think, a 10-speed non-synchronized transmission, but I just decided that I just don't want to get involved in it right now. So we're just going to put this one back in. And I'm going to leave this PTO on here right now. I took off all the pumps so that no fluid can come out of the transmission. I could block this off at the transmission, but I just don't have that plate. So we'll just leave this on here for right now. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm going to give you guys a before and after shot of this transfer case. Look how shot this thing looks. It just looks like totally rusted and rotted out. It's not rotted, but it's definitely rusted on the outside. But this is a very valuable transfer case, so we're going to restore this thing. I'm going to remove all these plates, sandblast absolutely everything, and then paint it and then put it back together. But look at that. Luckily they made these very stout, so this is the same transfer case that you could use for like almost as big as a concrete truck. So for this little light duty application it'll be perfectly fine.
Just hover it right where you need it. I said this is really all we need is a skid steer. Just hover it where you need it.
Set that down on the frame there. Slowly. This arm is hitting over here. I get that low frame first and then we go.
Go ahead. did something. Okay, we're a little more forward. Scary things. Just hanging by a thread.
There we go. Okay, hold on. Wait.
An eighth now. Alright, you gotta do, give me that so I can do one on the bottom so it goes even.
closer. Always pick up one end at a time once it sits down.
Yeah.
back and forth.
So I'm not going to use these tires on the front of this truck. I'm going to get something with open shoulders, much more aggressive, possibly a different size. But for right now, I just want to take these off and put them on the new axle just so I can roll it easily back and forth. And then I can get an idea of what I need to do for the brackets here. I have been absolutely striking out. I've spent most of this week finding new spring hangers that will go outside the frame, which I found a few from International or Navistar, but they're just not available. So I don't exactly know why this is so hard, and I've tried calling everywhere to see if somebody could fabricate me some, or if just, I've tried every possibility that I could think of, and I have not had any luck getting these correct spring brackets or spring hangers. So I may be fabricating my own. I'm not sure. I think that's pretty much where I'm down to right now. I'm just having no luck. I really didn't want to, because that's kind of a big project, because you really got to get things lined up right, otherwise you'll have a alignment problem on the front here, and then you'll just wear tires. But at this point, I may have no choice. So I'm going to slip this other axle underneath here, and then today's Friday, and I haven't got enough done this week to put out a video, so we're just going to keep going on this through the weekend and into next week, and we'll see what happens.
gotta get jacked up more because you're not clearing that oil pan.
So let me explain where I'm at right now. I got this axle underneath of here, and I'm trying to make things work, and I knew it was going to be a nightmare, but I didn't know it was going to be this much of a nightmare. So I decided to start trying to fabricate a mount for this side because I have the steering box that's supposed to be here, and the reason it looks like that is because we actually sandblasted it and then it got left out in the rain. So now it's rusted again, so we got to re-sandblast it. But it should only take 2 minutes to re-sandblast it. It's just really light rust. But anyways, I needed to mount this on here because there's going to be a clearance issue because this spring is going to be moving out 2.5 inches. So I wanted to mount this here because there's going to be the drag link here, and on this side is going to be the ball joint, and on this side is going to be a nut, and so that's going to stick out about 2 inches this way. So doing the math, it looks like I'm going to be just kissing that leaf spring. So I think what I'm going to need to do is put some spacers right here to take this power steering box and move it out like maybe 3/4 of an inch or so. I want a little extra clearance there. So that's not such a big deal, but I needed to mount this to kind of design this whole spring mount around this power steering box. On the other side, there's nothing really there, so I figured let's do this side because it's harder. So the mount that was here is this piece, and then this piece goes on top of it, and it is like that, so that the spring is underneath the frame. So I basically need to move it 2 3/8 of an inch outward. So I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been sitting here for a while, and I've just been going over all the different scenarios, all the different ways that I could design this mount. And I really wanted to just start with scratch and just put a plate there and just start welding up a really nice looking mount. But I think it makes sense to use some of what's here because I do like the way that this wraps around the frame, gets bolted with 2 bolts underneath and 2 bolts on the top. If I was coming directly outside of the frame, I would just put a big thick plate here, come down and just have a hole in it. But the problem is it doesn't do that. It goes down and in still just a little bit, like an inch. So a plate going straight down doesn't work. So I would need to make a bend going around and then down. And I'm sure I could do that, but it just makes sense to utilize what I have here and then add on to it. So I think what I'm gonna do is cut it right here, cut this ear off right here, and then I'll take this piece and move it inward 2 3/8, weld it back on both sides. And then on the outside, I'm thinking, let's utilize this plate as well. This was like this before. Attach a plate to the side, weld it on both sides, and then I'll also add some gussets, which I haven't fully figured out the outside piece yet, but let's start with the inside piece and we'll see how it goes from there. And then whatever I do here, I'll do exactly the same on the other side because I know it'll definitely work. So what I did here is use this piece to space these bolt holes exactly 4 1/4 apart for my leaf spring to sit in. And then I fabbed together these pieces for the side. And then I took it apart again. I just broke those couple little tack welds there. And I took everything outside and sandblasted it. So now it's nice and clean. And then I welded that up, because that's not going to be accessible later on. So I welded it up now. And then that way, once I'm done, I can knock this piece out of here and I can paint everything on the inside. I think I still need to sandblast the other side, but I can get to that later on. I can also weld that later on too. Okay, so I just gotta weld this all up, but I left some nice weldable gaps there. And I guess it doesn't look the prettiest, but it should work. So I was thinking with some short enough bolts, I could go this way with them, put the nuts on the inside of the frame, or I could do it vice versa. It doesn't really matter. The bottom is fully accessible, so that's not a problem. I already tried that out. The bolts fit there perfectly. They can go up or down with the nuts on the bottom or the nuts on the top. And then I was also thinking, you know, if I got a bolt that's long enough, I could put a bolt through and then put a nut on the inside and a nut here, so that I could have like this not able to be crushed because there's 2 nuts in here. You know, I'll just tighten the nut against that way, tighten the nut against that way, and then there'll be either a nut over here or a nut over here, and then that'll be like some reinforcing threaded rod kind of. I mean, it can't crush together because this plate's here and this plate's here, and that's pretty close, and there's no reason for that to crush anyways. Most of the force that's on this is going to be going upward. But I don't want to fully weld this up until I get the back mount made and then mount the spring and then make sure everything works, and then I'll weld everything up solid. Definitely dangerously close to this though. That's definitely not looking too good. But I don't know, I got a couple ideas. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do on the spring hanger, I gave it support laterally. But one thing you have to remember is I'm adding 4-wheel drive to this truck. So the wheel is going to be giving that hanger some thrust when it's in 4-wheel drive. It's going to be pushing on the front bracket. The back bracket can swivel. Now, if you didn't have 4-wheel drive, that would not be so important. The force forward and backwards is really not much. It is still kind of important with braking, because when you brake, the thrust will throw forward on that hanger there. So right now, if you look at the design of this thing, it's like a box. Now this box can flex, it can rack like this. Like these sides can rack. There's nothing stopping them. So what I've decided to do was put some internal support in here. Just like so. So now that racking can't happen. So half of the force is going to be on this side, which is attached right to the frame. So we're only trying to accommodate for half of the thrust that it's going to take, which is this side. But you always want to over-engineer everything. So this is 3/4 inch steel. I need to cut a piece. I'll show you why in a second, but watch how this saw cuts through this. 3/4 of an inch. basically this is gonna go right here. So that's what I got. Not done yet, but everything is fitting pretty good. These are 5/8 bolts. So now I can just mount this right here, just like that. I still need to put some spacers on here. I still need to make a top plate for this. The saddle for the U-bolts that goes on top, that doesn't fit anymore. You know, it's got these little grooves in it that this fits over top of. So I did get new U-bolts, but this won't work. So what I think I have to do is take a 1-inch plate and grind grooves in it, because it needs to be wider than this. So I'll have to start all over, take a 1-inch plate, grind grooves in it, and then weld an 1.25 or 1.5 dowel on the top, which I have a whole bunch of selection of this kind of stuff. Every time I go to the steel yard, I just grab whatever I can. So I have like tons of different like track presses and all kinds of pins. So I definitely have something for this, for the top, but I also need a hole on the bottom to fit over top of that bolt. And then on the bottom, this piece here is of course not wide enough as well. That is what actually holds my shock. So this is the first piece that goes on the axle. It's got this little locator on the bottom, little dowel, and then my shock mounts to here, and then the leaf spring sits on top of here, and then it goes up from there, and then that piece. So I got to fabricate a new one of these and a new one of these for each side. So yeah, I got a ton of work still to do just to fit this axle. So I'm gonna just keep going on that, and then take it one step at a time. So here's what I've come up with. 2 holes. They're spaced just far enough apart from each other to get the washers in there. Got one gusset there, one gusset there. That looks good. So now let me burn that in, and then we got to duplicate everything. All right, check that out. Right there, perfect. What we got going on here? Gotta go back. Okay, we're good. Put the nut on. Perfect.
Woo! Need that going on here. Ow.
I'm sure it has to go down. I won't let it.
Yep.
Is it a little bit or a lot of it?
A lot of it.
So to move this axle back and forth really easily, I got the tie rod on a dolly that rolls back and forth. That way I can just move this back and forth here like this. Nice and easy. And if you don't have that supported, this whole axle will tip. And that's a nightmare when that happens. Don't ask me how I know.
Right in the kisser. Okay. Is that a thing? Okay. Go down and then out and then down. No prying necessary.
Alright, so we reversed that oil pan. I took the pickup tube out for now, just because we couldn't have reversed it without doing that. So I got a new one ordered. We're just gonna fit this again with it switched around, just to make sure everything's good, which it looks like it definitely is, but let's just check, because the axle's gonna sit right here. So that's perfect. That's where I need to be, right there.
There.
And this is going to be up a little bit.
Hold on, let me move this block I just put in here.
No, actually it's not.
No, it's got to be like right where I had it. Almost.
I think it's definitely a lot better than it was before, though.
Oh, it's not hitting the pumpkin.
All right, so it is painful to say this, but I have to redo everything I just did on here. So when I made these hangers, I took measurements from the old axle to the new axle, from the frame to the frame. I somehow got it wrong. And I tried meticulously to make sure everything was really on point, because I know that when you have the front end just a little bit out, you can be out with your alignment too, and I don't want to be wearing tires and stuff. So I took my time and made sure everything was perfect. But somehow the angle of things got off a little bit. Some of that's to do with when I welded, things shrink and move. So look at this. I got like 3/16 of a space between here from just welding that up. The weld shrinks and it just moves any steel that it's in its way. So somehow I ended up a 1/2 inch off between this leaf spring and the other leaf spring on the back, and on the front I'm an inch off. I honestly don't know how that happened. Like I said, I really was paying attention to everything that I was doing. I double, triple checked everything, and I have no idea how that happened. And everything needs to move in. So I can't just space it out a little bit to make it work. So I absolutely hate to say this, but I'm just gonna start over from scratch. I'm gonna make these mounts from complete scratch. I didn't have the steel to do it, but today I went and I got all the steel that I need to do this. I was using scrap steel to do everything that I've done so far. But now I actually just went out and bought some steel. Took me a 1/2 day to go get it, but now I have the steel I need to make this. But the good news is I came up with a solution for this steering box, because you can see that I'm way too close, and with the knuckle on the other side, or you know, the top of the ball joint, it's definitely not going to work. So I had to space out this power steering box, but I've come up with a solution. So I need to lift this truck by about 3 inches just to be able to keep it with about that much clearance, which is not a lot, but it's probably enough. So I need to come up with 3 inches of lift here. Well, I was gonna do 3 inches of blocks here, but I came up with a better solution. Why not just take these spring hangers and just bring them down 3 inches? Because if I do that, now my bolt is sitting down here and this avoids it. And up top here, where this is gonna hit, I'm gonna have gussets, but they're gonna start angling in. So I'll just angle them in just enough to clear everything. And then this down here will be sticking out. Plus, I'm a little bit too far out anyway, so bring that back in. And I think this will be a really good solution here. And that's why I decided to just start over with everything, because if I can do something to help this, then that's even better. So I think for this particular spring mount, I'm actually gonna start with a plate that goes behind this power steering box and everything, so that it starts out, I'm gonna use 3/8 plate. So it starts out 3/8 of an inch out without really compromising any strength. As a matter of fact, it's actually adding strength because now I'm plating over this frame here. Plus, it gives me an extra 3/8 of an inch to avoid the gussets. So I'm not gonna get into all the details about exactly how I'm gonna do everything and go step by step with you guys. We're just gonna kind of blow through this I mean, it's going to take me a lot of time, but on the video, we're going to blow through this. And I'll just kind of show you what I have when I'm done. I'm not going to explain along the way.
I'm in.
I guess that was in. I'm just gonna let a little bit more weight down on it. This, it shouldn't be under that much tension, just a little bit. That wasn't even worth having that on there.
She didn't like it, but she did it.
Yeah, I mean, feels like I'm not too far from the tipping point.
Yeah, well, at least you got the best chance with the straps all the way there.
Yeah. Boy.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, I'm pretty strong, huh?
Yep, don't do that too much.
And that's like almost there, but. All right, so here we go again with the problems. It just seems to be never ending on this thing. So at this point, I made up all my spring hangers. They all work great. I put everything in, everything was going great. And then I looked down at the alignment between this tire and the back tires. And I realized that the whole axle is shifted this way too much by like 2.5 inches. So we got out a laser and started aligning from the back tires forward and realized that we are definitely 2.5 inches offset with the axle. So then I realized by measuring from the spring mounts on the axle to the rim and realized that those mounts are offset by 2.5 inches. 2 3/8 actually. So for the third time, now I need to come up with a different solution. So right now, this axle is exactly where it needs to be. It's exactly aligned, centered on those tires in the back, because it is offset by like 2 inches inside of the back tires. So 2 inches in, 2 inches in, it's exactly centered. We even aligned it so that the tires are exactly aligned right now. You know, it's turned, you know, the wheels are actually turned to exactly the right point for this truck would go straight down the road. So this axle is exactly where it needs to be right now. And wouldn't you know it, this spring is back underneath of this side of the frame. So I was able to put this original hanger back on, and of course I chopped up the front one so I can't put that one on. But I checked it, and apparently what they did with these was they used the original hangers on this side and they offset the axle this side by 4 3/4. I have no idea why they did that. Nobody was able to tell me this. I am totally into this thing by myself. I'm totally alone in this thing. There's nobody to help me. I've checked for weeks. I've checked online to find out what I could find out. I've checked from several different international dealerships. I've checked with Meritor, the company that makes the axle. I've checked every single four-wheel drive company around to see if they would actually just do this project for me. Not like I was really going to have them do it for me, but just to see what they would do. I've checked every single place I could check within 500 miles from here to see, is there a company that does this, converts these to four-wheel drive? No, there's not. There's not a single one. There might be one out west somewheres, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I've exhausted every one of my resources and then some. The international dealers are really annoyed with me because I'm just trying to pick their brains so much about this thing. I've tried to find different international trucks that were very similar, that had four-wheel drive. I run the VIN number, look up the parts. It just doesn't make sense why it's so hard to convert this to four-wheel drive. So I was finally able to backtrack, finding one of these axles. It's an MX14-120. I looked for that axle, found it from a truck in a junkyard, found out what the truck that it came with was, found out the VIN number for that. I was able to backtrack that VIN number back to the original build for that truck and found out by looking at the pictures, which I don't know are super accurate, but it looked like this side, the springs were underneath of the frame, just like I had it before. And then it seemed like this side, they were offset out a lot. So that makes sense. But I also think that they made two different versions of this axle. One was offset and one was not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they are all offset. I don't know. but the spring mounts for this side look like they were sticking out a lot. How much they're sticking out, I have no idea. So I was able to buy the one for the rear, but the one for the front was not available. I also tried, the truck that I looked at was a 7500. I also found another one that had this axle and it was a 7400. And I also looked at that one. The rear mounts are available, the front mounts are not. So I have two trucks that have this axle that the part numbers don't match, but that doesn't really mean anything because all it has to do is have one bolt hole slightly different than the other, and then they're exactly the same mounts, but just a different part number. So who knows? I can't verify one truck to the other. Plus one was like a 2007 and one was like a 2012. So that in itself could be the difference. There might be no difference in the part number. But regardless, I was not able to find a front passenger spring mount. So I ordered the rear one. Hopefully that's gonna be what I need. It's like $500 for that thing. Plus I wanted to get it overnight. So who knows if that's gonna be right or not. And it's special order, so I can't return it. And then, so I guess right now what I'm down to is I need to make a front spring hanger, and hopefully that's all I need to do. If that's the case, it's not too bad, but yeah, this has been an absolute nightmare. I can't even begin to tell you how frustrating this has been. I've wanted to give up so many times, but at this point I just keep getting deeper and deeper into it. I got an axle that I spent almost $3,000 on. I got a transfer case that I already sandblasted and painted, and I didn't pay that much for it, but I still spent a day going to get it. I also spent a day going to get this. I've got a lot of time. I have also got, 2 days into these mounts, 2 days into the other mounts. I've got like at least a week into this four-wheel drive ready. I can't give up now. It's just not really a possibility. At this point, it looks like I can still use the mounts on the driver's side. I had to order a new front one, obviously, because I hacked that one up. So I have those coming tomorrow, that one and the one on the rear on the other side. So fingers crossed, if I can get this mount made up today, by the end of the day tomorrow, we might have this axle mounted, hopefully. Now let me tell you one benefit that I did see in this whole thing, and this might be worth the whole process that I just went through. Because this pumpkin is offset more this way, that allowed me to drop this frame by quite a bit, actually. 4 inches maybe? And look, I still have that much clearance. This is exactly where it's gonna sit. So right now I have about 3.5 to 4 inches of clearance to the axle. And this is drooped down just a little bit, like if there was weight on the springs. So that should be exactly where it sits. So lowering it that 3 to 4 inches or whatever I did may be worth doing this whole thing, because I really did not want this frame sitting up as high as it was before. Like right now, you can almost not even tell that the front is sticking up a little bit. It is sticking up a little bit, but I don't know. I would say it's only about 3 inches in the front sticking up compared to the back. That's not too bad. That's way better than I thought. So maybe there's a silver lining in this whole thing. I don't know. I really hope so. I really hope tomorrow I can figure this out. I guess you guys will know sooner than I will. It's hard to stay positive about anything, but there are little things that it seems like are working to my advantage. So one thing is, remember how I made these mounts, but they had to like come down and then in and then down? Well, what's nice about this is, the way that this is right now, I need the inside of the spring 1 1/8 inches from the outside of this frame, which means we can come straight down with the plate and then add on here, and then do the same thing here where we box it out. And it's basically the same exact thing, except for the plate can just continue right through instead of stopping and having like a T there. So that's nice. So at this point, again, I don't want to bore you guys with doing this over and over again, so we'll just show a quick time lapse and be done. So I ordered this spring hanger and the one on the rear over there, and they were supposed to come in today and they did not come in today. They were supposed to arrive at the dealership. I actually drove an hour and a half there, and I had to drive an hour and a half home empty-handed because FedEx didn't deliver. They didn't even show up. This part was supposed to come in first thing in the morning, like 8 o'clock in the morning from FedEx. The other part was supposed to come in by 12 o'clock in the afternoon by FedEx. 2 separate trucks never showed up. Have any of you guys ever had trouble with FedEx? Because I've never not had trouble with FedEx. They were like the worst company and they should be banned from doing business. I ordered that rear spring hanger overnight priority. It was like over $100 to do that. Now I didn't pay that yet, and I probably won't have to pay that now, but still, International had to pay that. I've had the worst luck with FedEx. I can't even begin to describe my frustration with them. I've had several FedEx employees show up to this property and they did not even want to come down the road because it wasn't paved. They were like, oh, I'm gonna get stuck. I'm like, listen, man, I drive my semi-truck down here with a lowboy. You're not gonna get stuck. And I had another guy recently tell me that I have to get a drop box up there because otherwise they're not gonna deliver my packages. And I was like, yeah, you are. You're gonna deliver them and I'm not getting a drop box up there. I was like, you won't have a job by tomorrow if that's the case. But anyways, it does me no good to rant and rave about that. I am extremely frustrated, but it doesn't do anything to move the process forward by complaining about it. So I won't have that part until next week now, so there's no sense in even worrying about it. We'll just move on to something else. All right, so the best time to change your mind is while it still makes sense. So I know I already put the other transmission in, but I really did want a 10-speed in here, and I found one. So yeah, I already pressure washed and painted the other transmission and installed it, but that's not too big of a deal. Let's do the same thing to this one. This is an Eaton Fuller FROF 11210, and I believe it's the C model, which that doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but this is a 10-speed non-synchronized transmission. It's out of a 2012 International 7600, 7500, something like that. It was out of a tandem truck. So this transmission is a lot more heavy duty than what I really need, but the lower one from this only has a capability of like 650 foot-pounds of torque, and I want to turn my truck up, so I'm going to be well over that torque rating. So this one has 1100 foot-pounds of torque, or 1120 or something, and that's more than I need, but there's not really a great transmission in between that. There is like a 950 torque rating, but I just had a hard time finding it. This one was only about an hour away, and I paid $1,000 for it. It was out of a dump truck, so it had a giant PTO. There's a PTO opening right here for a regular PTO, but then there's like the jumbo PTO opening on the bottom, so we got to get a cover for that. But basically, if you don't know what a non-synchronized transmission is, this transmission, when you shift it, you basically use the clutch to put it in first gear, and then after that you don't use the clutch. Some people double clutch to go in between gears. I know that you have to do that on your road test to get a CDL. 95% of drivers that use this kind of transmission, they don't touch the clutch after you get into first gear. And so this one has overdrive. That's the O in the FROF. And the F on the end of FROF stands for this shifter housing being set back a little bit. This one also has a spring plate on it so that you can take some of the weight off of the transmission by setting this on a bracket in the frame, which I think is a good idea. Not all transmissions have that, but I think it's a great idea. So one of the reasons I got this transmission is because it has overdrive. That's really important because it gets it down to a 0.75 ratio. And also with 4 extra gears, 1 or 2 of them are an extra lower end gear. And then you also have just a little bit less space in between the gears for the rest of them. So it just all together, it's a really nice combination to have a 10-speed. So this transmission is like 600 pounds. My transmission that I already have in there, which is a synchronized transmission, 6-speed, that's an FS6406N, and that one only weighs like 350 pounds. So this is almost double the weight, and it's quite a bit wider and a little bit longer. So let's get this unloaded. Let's get it pressure washed, possibly sandblast. I don't think so, but maybe. We'll see what it looks like when it gets pressure washed. This is from a 2012 truck, so shouldn't be too bad. We should be able to just spray paint it and good to go. I do need to get a shifter tower and a whole shifter assembly for it, so I'm going to be searching for that. But right now I need to get this in here so that I can set my transfer case and hook it up, and then after that I can worry about the PTO cover, the shift tower, the shifter, the airlines, all that stuff. Right now I just need to get this in here so I can get the transfer case set. That is the most important thing, so that I can move on and start getting my driveline complete, which is going to be having new drive shafts made and all that stuff. And I also got the flywheel, a clutch, which seems to be a little bit of life left on it, and then pressure plate and throwout bearing, stuff like that. Okay, so underneath that thin layer of grease that was on the outside, grease and oil, there is nothing but rust, thick rust. I didn't expect that because this truck was a 2012, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and sandblast this and then paint it up, because there's no way I can paint over flaking rust, and I'm not taking a grinder wheel to this thing. I don't totally love the idea of sandblasting it, but as long as I cover up any holes and anything, then it should be fine. And it is so satisfying. It's satisfying to sandblast and it's satisfying to paint it. It's just so nice and clean. It's all like a consistent surface. I love it. I guess reassembling this truck is going to be fairly nice to do because there's going to be no rust, there's going to be no dust or dirt or grease or grime or oil or anything. Everything's just going to be super clean when I put it together. sure it won't stay that way forever, but at least it'll make putting it together fun. Kind of like brand new from the assembly line. Getting that sandblaster was like one of the best investments I've ever made. That thing is just gold. I've been using satin for everything. I think high gloss is just not necessary. It kind of makes things look tacky. Since I cleaned out in here, it's not totally necessary, but why not just spray paint this too? I don't want to leave it bare metal. Oh, and by the way, check that out. Looking good. I think out of all the spring hangers I've made, that's definitely the best one. I like that a lot. Got some nice welds in there too. Just overall looks really nice. I'm proud of that. So right now it's the weekend and I'm by myself, but I really want to get this new transmission put in, so I'm going to take this transfer case, slide it back a little bit, and then I'm going to pull that transmission back and out. I'm very confident I could do it myself. One thing I realized that I didn't realize before was this transfer case, that transmission, and the new transmission all have these little tabs that are meant for lifting it. Like this one's perfect. That's right where I need to lift it. And then it has these little tabs here, and yeah, I did not realize that. Because I'm so used to putting this stuff in from the bottom that I never pay attention to that kind of stuff. Because it's very rare to put something in through the top because the cab's not here. But it's also very convenient, so I'm going to use those. Okay, so I don't believe that that flywheel and pressure plate setup is going to work for this new transmission, because look at the flywheel here. I don't know what the purpose of this sleeve around the outside is, but I'm assuming that I'm just going to have to bolt this flywheel up and use everything here. Now the clutch is probably only about at its half-life point right now, but there's 2 discs, and between them there's a lot of meat. So yes, I should resurface the flywheel. Yes, I should get a new pressure plate or have that resurfaced. Yes, I should get new clutch discs. Yes, I should get an intermediate plate. But you know what? I could see that being $1,500 right now, and that's more than I paid for this transmission. So we could get a couple years out of this clutch setup. The only time you're ever using the clutch is going into first gear. After that, you never use it. So let's just work with it, and 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I'll go ahead and change it. But I got to get all this stuff cleaned up first, and then we'll try to install that. Hopefully that fits on my engine. I'm pretty sure it will. So let me give you a little rundown on how these transmissions work. Like I said, this one is a non-synchronized transmission, which means it has no synchronizers, which means you have to rev match the RPMs to the road speed to get this into gear, which sounds complicated, but that's how every single heavy duty truck is. A lot of medium duty trucks have this fully synchronized transmission, just like a normal standard pickup transmission would be. There's really no difference between this and a normal pickup transmission, other than this doesn't have overdrive. So normally, like on an NV4500, which you'd see in a lot of Dodge Rams, the 2nd generation and 3rd generation, they have a 1-to-1 ratio on the 4th gear, and then 5th gear is overdrive. So on this has 6 speeds, and on the 6th speed, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's a 1.0 ratio, which means there's no overdrive. So I specifically wanted this transmission just because it has overdrive. So, which means that I can actually change my ratio in my rear end to a higher ratio, which is a lower gear, and then I can still get my road speed 65, 70 miles an hour. I've never had this truck up to see what it actually goes to at full RPMs in 6th gear, so I don't know. It might already go 70 miles an hour, I'm not sure. There's also ways to figure that out. If you do some calculations between the RPMs and the ratio of the axle, you can figure that out, but I haven't done that yet. Anyways, my point is, before I put this transmission in here, I'd like to go over the differences between how they work. So on a non-synchronized transmission, you have what they call a clutch brake, and that's what this is. This is the old clutch brake out of here. This one is completely worn down. There's no fiber left on it. There's like a trace of it left right there, but pretty much this is all just steel. And so the way this works is this goes on first, and these little nubs that are right here engage in the input shaft here. So you can see that little nub that slides in there. So that makes it so that the inside of that can't turn. So this is stationary. I mean, it's got a little play, but it's stationary. It can't turn with this shaft. So the idea behind the clutch brake is to stop this input shaft from moving. That way you can get it into gear for the first gear, and then after that you don't use it. So when you push a clutch all the way down on a heavy duty truck, like a semi truck or some heavy duty, medium duty trucks, you are engaging this clutch brake when you push it all the way down. Now if you push that clutch all the way down while you're driving, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, whatever gear you're in, you will wear out that clutch brake really fast. And that might have happened here. People that don't know what they're doing, they'll do that. They'll push it all the way in. There's no reason to push that clutch all the way in once you're into the first gear. After that, you never do that again until you're back into first gear. That's only coming from a dead stop to starting out. And other than that, you never use it, because otherwise it's spinning way faster than it should be, and you wear it out really fast. So with a synchronized transmission, you don't have to do that. On a synchronized transmission, the synchronizers help you get it into that gear to start out with. Whereas this is just gear to gear, there's no synchronizer. So this engages onto this input shaft of the transmission with these nubs, and then on this side of it, that engages the flywheel, the throwout bearing, which is integral to the flywheel. On a smaller pickup truck, the throwout bearing will be separate because it's a push style. But on this, it's a pull style. So you're pulling out on this throwout bearing to disengage the transmission from the engine. So I don't think you can actually replace this throwout bearing without putting a new pressure plate in. It's all one piece because it needs to pull out. So on the transmission, it has those arms and it pulls out, but that's the surface that that clutch brake rides against. So this is a different throwout bearing than the one that's on here. I don't know, you might be able to use the same one. It's kind of got a surface there that you could brake against, but for the most part, I don't think that that would be advisable to do that. I think that this is not meant for a clutch brake. I could be wrong though. So I need to remove that pressure plate and the clutch discs, the intermediate disc, and the flywheel. The flywheel, I'm not sure if that would work with this one, but you know, I got the new stuff with this transmission, so I might as well use it. But this truck only had 100,000 miles on it, but it was a dump truck. So I could see how you could wear down the clutch a lot faster with a dump truck. I know that I should be replacing the discs, the intermediate disc, and the pressure plate, and have the flywheel resurfaced. I get it, but it's not gonna happen here. In a matter of a few hours, I could change that in the future, so it's not on the menu right now. So since it's Saturday and I did not have a chance to pick up a new one of these, I'm just gonna omit it and I'm gonna put it in afterwards with a 2-piece. So normally when these wear out, you can just cut them out and put in a 2-piece, which is basically, it's a split setup, and you wrap it around here from underneath. There's this cover plate here, an access plate. You take that off, you can reach your hand in here. There's enough room where you can reach your whole hand up in here. And you gotta cut this out, and then you put a new one in. Sometimes you can manage to actually just put a new one in that's thinner, and you don't have to cut the old one out, but it's best to cut the old one out. And that is the biggest pain in the butt, to cut the old one out. To put a new one in, it's 30 seconds, but to take the old one out and to cut it out, you could be hours. I've never had to actually take one out, but I've put a new one in, a split setup, next to the old one that was worn out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm not gonna stop what I'm doing and wait until Monday where I can get a clutch brake. I'm going to put a 2-piece setup in afterwards, because like I said, the hardest part is taking this one out. So if I don't have to take that out, putting a new one in it's a 5-minute job. So we'll do that later. And in the meantime, we're not gonna let that hold us up. easy as any other one. It's all lined up. All right, well, I didn't realize, I didn't get these bolts from the guy that I got this transmission from. And these are meant to go through an intermediate plate. See, the intermediate plate on the other one bolts to the flywheel. It goes through so that it can't spin. This one is inside of this cupped housing, and it's got little tabs to make sure it doesn't move. So one way or the other, you have to stop it. On the other one, it was through bolt holes that bolted onto the other flywheel. This one has tabs to locate it, so the bolts have to be shorter. So I'm just gonna go get new bolts. These aren't anything special though. So I'm gonna guess that these are 3/8 coarse. Yeah, so that's 16 threads per inch, 3/8 bolts. All right, so that's a heavy transmission. I was able to get it in, but it wasn't easy. So now we have this, I can't remember exactly what they call that, but it's like a spring plate. It's made out of spring steel, and you basically just take a piece of angle iron and put it right up against here and put a little tension on it. That way it kind of takes a little bit of the weight off of the back of this whole assembly. Because right now, everything is cantilevering from these mounts back. That's a lot of weight to be like pulling back. Now, some transmissions don't have this, so I'm sure it'll be fine without it, but I would rather have it on there. I just think it's a good idea. So I'm gonna put it on there. So I got the brackets that it came with, and I just gotta mag drill into the frame and then mount those. But right now, I'm not worried about that. That's more or less for when you're putting torque on things. So, you know, the whole engine's going like this all the time. Right now, I want to get this transfer case set in place. That's more important to me. That way I can start getting measurements for drive shafts and stuff. All right, guys, so we might be at a stopping point here. So that's the U-joint off the drive shaft that was on the truck originally that made it up to that transmission that I just removed. So that yoke that it takes is bigger than what this drive shaft takes. So not only is the cap wider, but the whole U-joint is wider as well. So I'm not sure if the Driveline shop is gonna need to cut this yoke off and put another one on, or if they need me to get another yoke for this transmission. It almost seems like it's possible that I might be able to take that yoke off and put it on this one, but I have my doubts. That is a much bigger shaft. So unless the shaft doesn't matter and it's only the spline that counts, then we may be looking at, I don't know, possibly getting a new one of these, or I'm not really sure. So what that means is that I can't mate that up with this transmission right now, which means that I can't set this in place. So we're 3-4 days from being able to do that, because it's the weekend and I would need to go to the Driveline shop, and yeah, we're gonna be like Tuesday or Wednesday before we can actually get this transfer case set. And then the front drive shaft that's gonna come out of here to go to the front axle, that is like the size of a regular pickup truck U-joint. So I don't know what that's about. I'm gonna have to have the Driveline shop make me a new drive shaft for that, because I don't have anything for that. So hopefully they got what I need and they can just put a new yoke on for this side, and then on the other side they need to match that one up. So I got a lot of measuring to do. And then on top of that, the rear drive shaft on this thing, I'm assuming that that's also going to be the same thing, where it's not going to meet up. Yeah. So this U-joint is definitely bigger than that one. So I think that I do need to have them just weld me on a new yoke for here, because from here back to there is going to be all custom anyways. So if they're going to make a drive shaft, they can just make it with the right yoke. So hopefully I don't have to change that. But it seems like I might have to change that unless I just have a new drive shaft made. But we're talking thousands of dollars here to do this kind of stuff. So I got to find out which is the cheapest way to do it. Because I have plenty of drive shaft left. Because not only am I moving that axle forward, but I moved everything back a lot. Not only is the transmission a little bit longer, but then you add the transfer case, I'm taking off like 3 feet here and like 3 feet there. So we got a lot of drive shaft left, but I don't know if that really helps at all, because the tube is probably the cheapest part of it. Putting the yoke on and buying the yoke is probably the hardest and is probably the most expensive part. So I guess we're at a stopping point right now. Can't do anything really until I get to the Driveline shop, and I'm probably going to make several trips back and forth before I get things right. I'm not so worried about putting the drive shaft on the front right now. That's the least of my concern. That can happen later on. But I do need to get this hooked up and then get a drive shaft from here to there, because I would like to do that before I set the cab. I just want to figure everything out. I even want to wire up. I got sensors here. I got air lines. I want to figure that all out. Air lines for this transfer case. I want to figure that all out before I put the cab on. Much easier to do that. So it looks like if we get to set the cab, it's going to be last thing next week. But it is what it is. Setting the cab is not going to let me drive this truck. I still got a lot of work after that. So it really doesn't matter when I set the cab. It's just, I do want to get it set pretty soon. So to give you a rundown on cost, just to convert this to 4-wheel drive, let me see. I got $2,800 into the axle plus a few $100s worth of traveling and stuff like that. I have $500 into the transfer case / axle that I couldn't use. I have $400 worth of steel to make those brackets. I'm gonna have probably $2,000 or more into drive shafts. I have another $600 into ordering those 2 hangers. I have 2 weeks of my time and a few days of the guy's time. It looks like I'm gonna have to redo the kingpins on these axles. I have no idea why. They only had like 60,000 miles on these axles. Someone didn't grease them. I'm like 90% sure that it's the kingpins. I won't know for sure until I hook everything back up, but I think so. I have $300 into U-bolts. The first U-bolts that I got were too long. That's my fault, but still, I got $300 into that. It's gonna cost somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to re-gear this, because this is a 6.14 ratio and I have a 4.6 4.63 ratio in the back. So I could re-gear the back, which would probably be cheaper, but I'd rather have that ratio. That 4.63 is more ideal for what I'm trying to do, so I'd rather re-gear the front, even if it's a little bit more expensive. But nonetheless, there's, you know, let's say $4 grand into that. A new oil pickup tube is like $100. I think that's it. I'm probably missing something, but whatever that adds up to, that's what it cost me to convert this to 4-wheel drive. So yeah, I really don't know if it was worth it. Probably could have just got some tire chains for the back. Probably could have got a locker for the back. Probably could have bought some winches and been like 10% of the money that I just spent on this. But, you know, it's one of those things, once you get into it, you start going, and then it's stupid to give up at that point. So I didn't get nearly as much done as I wanted to in this video. I was hoping that I would get the cab set and we'd get wiring and air hooked back up and get this thing looking like something besides a frame with an engine in it. But I guess this is sort of the slow moving part of it. I don't want to rush putting the cab back on. I figure I don't even need to worry about moving this axle until the cab is back on, because that can all be done with the cab on. That's no problem at all. Matter of fact, I'd rather have the cab on, because once we set the cab, then we can start putting seats in there, which we had to refabricate all the mounts for that. That's several days worth of work. I got to put together all the different components. It leaves the guys a lot of work to do while I'm doing other stuff. So it's ideal to set the cab as soon as possible. That cab is over there just looking good and itching to go back in, and it's just collecting dust right now. I was even thinking when I put this cab back on that I can go all out in it, put a nice stereo in it, put a nice big subwoofer in the back, put all new speakers in it, put a CB radio in it. I got a lot of work with wiring and stuff, especially with the transfer case, and now I gotta bring some air lines up for the shifter for the new transmission. So we got a lot of work once that cab goes back on, so that'll be the priority in the next video. But I guess that could be it for this video, guys. I don't know what else to say. Just got to keep moving forward. So I guess I'll catch you on the next one. And by the way, I had to get a new compressor. I told you guys I have no luck with gas engines. But just behind my skid steer there is the new compressor. And that's a Solaire or whatever it is. This has a diesel engine in it, and like I said, guys, I've said this for a long time, I have absolutely no luck with gas engines. I just can't keep them running. And I have no patience for the whole ignition system with the spark. Diesel is my thing. This has a John Deere 4039D engine, which, if you guys remember, that's the same exact engine that's in my telehandler, the one that I rebuilt. So I know that engine inside and out. It's exactly the same engine. I could stick this in my telehandler if something ever happened to that engine. And this one runs good too. It starts right up. Like one revolution and this thing's running. And this is 185 CFM. And my old one is 125. Man, what a hunk of junk that thing is. Mainly because it's gas though. But that extra CFM makes the sandblasting go twice as quick. So much better. But the main thing is that I can just hit the key and that thing's working. That thing just never wanted to run.